I never thought a simple night in my apartment could change my life forever. Honestly, I didn't even believe in experiments like my roommate always bragged about, science projects, DIY biology kits, little chemical concoctions he swore would blow our minds. I had brushed him off countless times. Until that night. It started as usual, him pacing around the living room with wild excitement, notebooks and vials scattered across the table, muttering formulas and chemical names I couldn't begin to pronounce. "Dude, this is insane," he said, his eyes wide and glowing. "I'm telling you, this one will literally change everything." I laughed nervously. "Change everything? Bro, just last week your mind-reading juice gave you a nosebleed." He waved me off. "Not the same, not even close. This is next level." I shrugged and went to my room, thinking I'd tune him out. But the next thing I remember, I was asleep, and everything changed overnight. When I woke up the next morning, something felt off. At first, it was small. My chest hurt when I stretched. My arms felt strange, lighter somehow. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe I'd just slept wrong. But then I noticed the mirror. And froze. My reflection wasn't mine. Not entirely. My face was softer, my jaw smaller, my lips fuller. My skin was different. Smooth, flawless, glowing. And my body, my God, my body. Curves where there had been none. My waist narrower. My hips wider. My shoulders narrower. I stumbled back from the mirror, heart hammering. My hands shook as I touched my chest. It was real. I was feminine. Completely. Overnight. I could hear my roommate laughing in the kitchen, calling me for breakfast. My voice cracked as I whispered to myself, "No, no way, this isn't happening." When I stumbled into the living room, I barely recognized my own body. My roommate's eyes practically bulged out of his head. "Holy shit. It worked," he said, clapping his hands. I told you it would work." I glared at him, voice quivering. "You did what?" He grinned, holding up a tiny syringe I hadn't noticed before. "Relax, it's just a hormonal stabilizer. The main serum worked while you slept. You're officially my experiment. Congrats, you're a girl now." I felt my stomach drop. My vision blurred. I couldn't speak. The words stuck in my throat. My body felt alien, yet impossibly, terrifyingly natural. "Girl." I managed finally. You can't just." But he waved me off. "Don't panic. Don't fight it. I've already measured the changes. You'll get used to it faster if you just accept it." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But the way my body moved, the way my hair fell softly around my face, even my posture seemed to insist that I stay. The rest of the morning was a blur of panic, disbelief, and horror. Every movement felt alien. My clothes, everything I'd worn to bed, hung wrong, accentuating curves I had never had. Even my voice when I tried to shout sounded higher, lighter, unfamiliar. I tried calling my parents. My fingers trembled as I typed the words, my new soft fingernails catching the keys awkwardly. And when I pressed send, my voice in the voicemail wasn't mine. My mom's laugh on the line wasn't reassuring. She asked why I sounded different. And suddenly, the reality hit me. This wasn't temporary. Not a bad dream. This was me now. I ran to the mirror again. My reflection stared back, foreign but undeniably feminine. Panic bubbled in my chest. But amid the fear, a tiny, strange spark of curiosity flared. The next few hours were chaos. I tried my old clothes. They didn't fit. My jeans cut into my hips painfully. My t-shirts rode up awkwardly. I had to raid my roommate's stash of clothes. He'd clearly prepared for every eventuality, and even those felt alien. Soft fabrics, fitted cuts, skirts, blouses, even a small bra that dug into my chest but fit. I touched the soft fabric of a skirt and froze. My own hands, soft. My own body, feminine. My mind reeled. How could this have happened? Why did it feel, oddly, exciting? I told myself it was fear. It had to be. But I caught myself staring at my reflection for longer than I wanted to admit, noticing how the skirt flared around my new hips, how the blouse hugged my curves. My lips were slightly glossy from the residue of a tinted balm. My hair framed my face perfectly. I felt beautiful. And I hated it. I spent the next day experimenting secretly. In my apartment, I tried walking differently, softer steps, more graceful movements. I experimented with my new voice, softening words, speaking with delicate tones. I even practiced tiny gestures, flipping my hair, tilting my head, crossing my legs, and each small adjustment made me feel alive, and scared, and guilty, and thrilled, all at once. My roommate watched with quiet fascination, occasionally offering pointers. Try turning your wrist like this, sit like you're floating, not falling. I wanted to punch him. I wanted to run. I wanted to hide. But every instruction, every movement, made my body feel natural. My mind felt curious. By evening, I couldn't deny it anymore. Something inside me had shifted. I was exploring, experimenting, discovering her. Then came the first public test. I needed food, water, life. And stepping outside as this new version of myself terrified me more than anything. I slipped into a modest dress, one that hugged my waist but didn't scream for attention, and styled my hair in loose waves. My heart raced. My hands shook. Every step toward the street felt like stepping onto a stage. The world reacted immediately. People stared. Some whispered. A few smiled. One woman even said, "Nice dress." My knees nearly buckled, but something inside me, a spark of courage, perhaps, or curiosity, made me smile back. Every interaction that day, from the cashier calling me miss to a stranger holding the door open, was a mix of terror and thrill. My heart pounded, but my body, strange as it was, felt right. Alive. I had never felt more exposed and more myself at the same time. Over the next few days, I slowly grew bolder. I practiced at home, experimenting with makeup, clothes, voice, even gestures. My roommate helped reluctantly, but his fascination never wavered. Every time I caught my reflection, I felt a strange, dangerous mix of fear and exhilaration. My identity, my old life, my former self, slipping further away, replaced by a version I was only just beginning to understand. Then came the biggest challenge, a gathering with friends. People who had known me as a guy, who had never seen this version of me. I froze, staring at the outfit I had painstakingly chosen. The dress was flowing, feminine, soft. My hair perfectly styled. My makeup subtle but enhancing. Do I go? I whispered to myself. My roommate shrugged. You look amazing. Just own it. The party was a nightmare wrapped in wonder. Every glance felt like scrutiny. Every whisper sounded like judgment. And yet, every compliment, every smile, every moment of acceptance made me feel powerful. For the first time, I realized something. Transformation wasn't just about the body. It was about courage. About vulnerability. About stepping into a version of yourself you had never dared to explore. By the end of the night, I had learned something crucial. I could hide. I could resist. I could try to be the old me. But why would I? My body, my mind, my very presence had changed. And for the first time, I understood that this, her, was me now. The experiment had been forced, sudden, terrifying. But it had opened a door. A door I never wanted to close. The days that followed blurred into a series of discoveries. I learned to dress, move, speak, and exist as her. I navigated the world with new confidence, blending fear and excitement, embarrassment and pride. Strangers' compliments no longer made me flinch. The mirror no longer scared me. I had grown into a version of myself I didn't know existed. The experiment my roommate had forced upon me had become the catalyst for a truth I could no longer deny. I had been scared, reluctant, resistant. And yet, through all that fear and chaos, I had discovered authenticity. I had discovered courage. I had discovered me. Looking back, I realize now that the transformation wasn't just overnight. The body changed quickly, yes, but the mind took time, and the heart even longer. And I had to fight, against fear, embarrassment, confusion, and the world itself, to become her fully. But I did it. And I will never, ever regret it. Because sometimes, the most unexpected experiments don't just change your body. They change your life. The morning after my first tentative steps outside, I woke with a knot in my stomach. My reflection in the mirror didn't just show me as feminine. It demanded that I confront a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. My body had adjusted overnight in ways I hadn't imagined. My curves were more pronounced, my face softer, my hair falling in loose waves that framed me perfectly. And yet, the fear lingered. I dressed carefully that morning, choosing a soft blouse and a skirt that hugged my waist without being provocative. My hands trembled as I smoothed down my hair and adjusted my clothes. Every step toward leaving the apartment felt like stepping into a spotlight, every sound outside the door a drumbeat of potential judgment. When I reached the street, the world reacted immediately. Eyes lingered. Heads turned. A man held the door for me, calling out, "After you, miss." My chest tightened. My pulse raced. I wanted to run, to shrink into myself, to hide behind the familiar comfort of my old body. But a strange, electric thrill surged through me. The attention, terrifying as it was, awakened something inside me. Curiosity, excitement, maybe even pride. For the first time, I felt the duality of fear and exhilaration, a sensation I would come to recognize as the essence of living fully in this new identity. I wandered through the city, cautious but increasingly daring. I passed a cafe and decided to go in, ordering a coffee with hands that were still shaky but increasingly sure. The barista smiled, calling me miss, and I almost laughed aloud at the shock of it. I could feel my pulse in my throat, my cheeks burning, but I didn't run. I sipped the coffee, savoring the moment, letting the reality of my new self sink in. Every glance, every whisper, every casual compliment became a lesson in courage. I practiced my voice, softening words, speaking with a gentle cadence. I experimented with gestures, tilting my head, crossing my legs gracefully, moving with a fluidity I had never known. My roommate's instructions, once invasive and irritating, now felt like guides through a strange, exhilarating new world. That afternoon, I ventured further. I visited a small boutique, trying on clothes that I never would have touched before. The mirror reflected a stranger who was undeniably me. I ran my hands over the fabrics, feeling them cling to my new curves, and a shiver ran through me. I caught my reflection from the side and blinked. My hips, my chest, my posture, all unmistakably feminine. And yet, as I stared, I felt a strange satisfaction, a quiet thrill I couldn't name. Returning home, I found myself practicing at every mirror. Each glance no longer brought panic, only fascination and curiosity. My body, my movements, my voice, they all felt more natural, more alive. I realized that resisting this transformation was impossible. The roommate's experiment had forced me into a new reality, but living in it, accepting it, that was mine to explore. By evening, I began testing the limits of my confidence. I walked down busy streets, lingering in areas crowded with people, observing reactions, noting the subtle shifts in attention. I noticed how strangers adjusted their tone, how conversations paused when I spoke softly but confidently. Each interaction, terrifying as it was, became a small victory. At night, in the privacy of my apartment, I reflected on the day. I had survived exposure. I had faced judgment, curiosity, and attention, and I was still standing. More than that, I felt exhilarated. The old me, the frightened, hesitant me, seemed like a distant memory. This new self, fluid, feminine, alive, was beginning to claim space in my mind, my heart, my body. And yet, fear lingered. What would happen tomorrow? How would friends, family, co-workers react if they discovered me like this? Could I maintain this identity in public, in professional spaces, in everyday life? I didn't know the answers. I only knew that hiding was no longer an option. I had stepped into a world I had never imagined, and it was both terrifying and irresistible. That night, as I lay in bed, I whispered to myself, I can do this. I have to. My reflection in the darkened mirror of my room seemed to nod back, affirming a truth I was only beginning to accept. I was no longer just a subject of an experiment. I was becoming someone entirely new, someone who existed fully and boldly in the world, her. The roommate's experiment hadn't just changed my body. It had forced me to confront my own fears, my own desires, my own identity. And as terrifying as it was, I realized, maybe this was exactly what I needed to find the courage to live authentically, to step fully into a self I had never dared to explore. The days ahead would be challenging, filled with exposure, judgment, and risk. But for the first time, I was willing to face them, not as the old me, not as someone hiding, but as her. Fully, undeniably, irrevocably. The weekend came, and with it, my first real test outside the apartment. My roommate had a party planned, a small gathering of his friends, most of whom had only ever known me as the guy I had been. I spent hours in front of the mirror, obsessively adjusting my hair, my makeup, and my outfit. I chose a soft pastel dress, one that hugged my waist and flowed over my hips. My hair fell in loose waves around my shoulders, and my makeup was subtle but enhancing, highlighting the curves of my face I was still learning to accept. I stared at my reflection for what felt like an eternity, heart hammering in my chest. Can I really do this? Can I face them like this? I asked myself, gripping the edges of the dresser. My fingers brushed against the smooth fabric of the dress, and I felt a jolt of something I didn't recognize at first, a mix of fear, thrill, and a strange, electric excitement. The elevator ride down felt endless. Each floor dinged like a drum in my chest, and every step toward the living room felt like walking onto a stage. When I finally stepped inside, the room fell into a brief, stunned silence. Eyes widened. Some whispers floated through the air. "Is that him?" one of the guys muttered, disbelief in his tone. I froze, ready to bolt. My pulse raced, my chest tight, but then something strange happened. I realized I didn't want to run. Not anymore. The world could stare, judge, whisper, but I was here now, and I was her. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and smiled softly. "Hey," I said, voice trembling slightly but with a deliberate softness I had practiced for days. The whispers faded into curious glances. Some friends smiled, hesitant but warm. One of the women in the room approached me, eyes wide but friendly. "Wow, you look incredible," she said, genuine admiration in her tone. I felt a warmth spread through me, a mixture of pride and disbelief. Me? Incredible? I had spent the past week terrified of this new body, this new identity, and now here it was, being acknowledged, being seen. The night unfolded like a delicate balancing act. I navigated conversations, laughter, and subtle stares, learning how to move, speak, and exist as her in a social setting. Every compliment, every acknowledgement, every polite curiosity chipped away at the fear that had gripped me since the experiment began. There were moments of intense anxiety, of course. Someone would glance at me in confusion, or a friend would whisper, barely audible, and I would feel my stomach twist. But each time, I reminded myself, I wasn't hiding anymore. I couldn't. And in letting go, I began to feel free. By the end of the evening, I had laughed, danced, and even held a casual conversation without faltering. The reflection in the mirror that night, when I finally returned home, was no longer terrifying. My face, my body, my movements, they all felt familiar, natural, undeniably mine. I touched my cheek softly and whispered, "You're beautiful. You are her. You are you." The experiment had forced me into a new reality. Yes. But living in it, exploring it, embracing it, that was my choice. And for the first time since that night, I felt a thrill I had never imagined, empowerment. I had survived exposure, judgment, and my own fear. And I had emerged not broken, not ashamed, but transformed in every sense of the word. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at my reflection, letting the realization sink in. My roommate's experiment had been the catalyst, but the transformation, physical, emotional, social, was mine to own. I had faced the world as her, stumbled, faltered, and yet survived with growing confidence. The fear would always linger, I knew that. But the empowerment, the thrill of being seen, of being acknowledged, of being herself, was intoxicating. I had discovered something essential about identity, courage, and authenticity. And for the first time in my life, I understood that sometimes the most terrifying transformations lead to the most profound self-discoveries.